Now imagine for a minute a little bit of a philosophical experiment. Imagine you go on a long train ride. And I'm not talking about a train ride that's a couple hours, I'm talking about a couple decades. So you get into this train and you go on a 30-year train ride. It's a fast train, so you can't see what's going on around you. And during that 30-year period, nothing in that train changes. The people might get a little bit older, but by and large, nothing in that train changes. And so for 30 years, you're on this train, and then one day you stop and you get out, and it appears that the entire world around you has changed. But how come you didn't notice it? You never took time to get off the train. You never looked out the window. You never did anything that allows you to look beyond what's going on right in front of you. And that's where many organizations are stuck today. They're stuck on this long train ride, and they have a very hard time getting off the train to look at what's going on in the world around them. And as I mentioned, that's a very outdated way of thinking. In fact, our organizations are so outdated that if you were to look up the word employee in the dictionary, you would find that synonyms for the word employee include cog, servant, and slave. Actual synonyms in the dictionary. If you were to look up the word manager in the dictionary, you would find synonyms include slave driver, boss, and zookeeper. That's my favorite one. And if you were to look up the word work in the dictionary, you would find synonyms that include daily grind, drudgery, struggle. Now, if you put these three things together, we're basically all cogs working for a zookeeper as we go about our daily struggle. Whew. Man, work sucks. Right, you can't get excited about something like that when this is literally embedded into how we think about work. I mean, people watch the movie Office Space like it's a documentary. Right, we've all watched that movie and we kind of laugh a little bit and then we kind of cringe because we realize that that is the environment that so many of us actually work in. But thankfully, we're starting to see changes happen when we think about the future of work. Thankfully, there are trends that are forcing us to look broader into this cone. And some of these trends were touched on a little bit earlier, and I'll refresh them a little bit for you. The first one is around behaviors.
Do you want to hear something really crazy? 96% of the people who watch videos on this channel are not subscribed. Can you do me a favor and help me change that number by subscribing to this YouTube channel? Thank you very much.
We're seeing new behaviors that we are all exhibiting and that everyone in the world is exhibiting in our personal lives that are making their way into our organizations. The way that we communicate, the way that we collaborate, share, engage, purchase things, all of these things are completely different than they used to be a couple decades ago. So these new behaviors, largely fueled by social media and all these different technologies that we're using in our personal lives, are making their way into our organizations, and they're forcing organizations to think differently about how work gets done. The second trend that we're seeing is around changing demographics, millennials. Now, I know when most people think about millennials, they think of these weird, like, alien creatures that are coming in from another planet. They're going to just destroy everything and wreak havoc. And you're right. I'm kidding. Millennials aren't that bad. But most of the studies and the research actually shows that millennials are not that different to everyone else that you have working for your organization. They still care about a lot of the same things. They want to work for an organization where they feel a sense of purpose. Who doesn't? They care about having a good relationship with their manager, with their peers. They care about compensation and flexibility. These are things we all care about. Today, millennials are already the largest workforce demographic. And so they have a little bit more of a voice than most other generations have. But make no mistake, when you are thinking about designing your organization, you're not designing it for millennials. You're designing it for the future employee. You're designing it for everybody. It just so happens that we are very focused on millennials because they are such a large part of the workforce demographic. The third trend that we're seeing is around globalization. Globalization is this idea that the world we live in is becoming just like one city. The language that you speak, the currency that you transact in, the culture that you subscribe to, where you're physically located. All of these things are starting to matter less and less and less. So the world itself is becoming just like one big city. The fourth trend is around mobility. Now, the best way that I can think about explaining mobility is to share a story. A couple of years ago, I went to China for a month. And I went to all the major provinces that one would go to in China, Beijing, Shanghai, and all that typical tourist stuff. But one of the provinces that we went to was Yunnan. And in the Yunnan province, we decided to rent bikes and go bike out into the middle of nowhere. And so we took a bunch of food, we rented bikes, and for hours we biked out into the middle of nowhere until we were surrounded by rice paddy fields. Rice paddy fields, beautiful sky. It was gorgeous. And we stopped for a minute. I look around and I see a rice paddy farmer not too far away from me in the rice paddy fields. And he's in the fields doing his chores, then he stops for a minute, and he puts his hand in his pocket and takes out a smartphone. Now, I live in the Bay Area, which many people consider to be this tech and innovation hub of the world, and here we are thousands of miles away from the Bay Area, in the middle of nowhere, in a rice paddy field, and here's a rice paddy farmer with a smartphone who has access to the same people, the same information, the same content that I do living in the Bay Area. That's mobility. The fifth and final trend that we're seeing is around technology. And technology is a big one. Big data, robots, automation, the Internet of Things, augmented, virtual reality, all these wonderful technologies that we keep hearing about. And the pace of technological change is continuously increasing. And so organizations around the world are always struggling, trying to figure out how do we adapt to the different technologies that are emerging. And so that's the fifth trend, is technology. Now make no mistake, these 5 trends are absolutely forcing organizations to think differently about what the future of work is going to look like. And although we don't know what the future is going to be, there's pretty much one thing that I can tell you for certain. It's going to be about people still working together. It's going to be around collaboration. Because regardless of what the future might bring, the future is not something that you face alone. The future is something that you as partners face together. It's why I am so excited about conferences and events such as this, where partners come together. Because you are collectively going to look into that cone, and you are collectively going to decide what that future is going to look like and what you need to do to build that future. In the 1980s, there were 3 very fierce competitors: Kmart, Walmart, and Sears. In the 1980s, Sam Walton, the creator of Walmart, decided to do something a little bit radical. And he decided to build better relationships and networks with his partners. He decided to open up information with them. He decided to collaborate with them more effectively. And this was, at the time, a radical concept because none of these other retailers shared information. They didn't collaborate with their partners. But Sam Walton thought, you know, I think there's benefit to be had for everybody if we start to do this. And so they started to share information, sales information, revenue information. They started to build these innovation networks where they would collaborate on ideas. And this allowed them to improve their forecasting. This allowed them to improve the products and services that they offered. Now, fast forward to where we are today. In the 1980s, the annual revenue or profit for Walmart was $24 billion. For Kmart, it was $29 billion, and for Sears, it was $31 billion. Today, for Walmart, it's $484 billion plus. Kmart went bankrupt, and Sears is on his way out. So this idea of working with your partners and building these collaboration networks absolutely has a lot of benefit and value, especially when you start to think about what the future is going to look like.